She didn't notice it at first. She was too caught up in the moment, laughing with some stranger over complimentary champagne in the airport lounge, pretending she wasn't terrified about the investor pitch that could make or break the next 5 years of her career. She looked radiant, relaxed, untouchable. That was always her gift. The ability to make you believe everything was perfectly fine even when the entire floor beneath you was crumbling. I know because I believed it for almost 3 years. But then she reached into her handbag for her compact mirror, and her fingers stopped. Her smile, that flawless practice smile, just faltered. Just for a fraction of a second. Her hand paused inside the bag like it had touched something it didn't expect. Something soft. Something that shouldn't have been there. And then she pulled it out. A small black velvet box, the kind that holds something serious. Her perfectly manicured nails hovered over it. She turned it over once. Then she opened it. Inside was a ring. Not just any ring. Her wedding ring. The one she had told me she lost somewhere in Denver 8 months ago. The one she had tearfully described slipping off her finger near a hotel pool. How devastated she was. How irreplaceable it felt. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly calculated, was that I had found it 2 weeks earlier, wedged between the passenger seat and the floor mat of a silver Audi that belonged to neither of us. She blinked. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. And then she saw the note tucked beneath the velvet cushion. Just 2 lines. No greeting, no signature. You don't need to lie about late meetings anymore. I've already left the key on the counter. She read it once. Then again, slower this time, like she was trying to decode a language she'd forgotten she spoke. Her pupils widened. The man beside her said something, but she didn't hear him. Her heartbeat was probably drowning everything out. I know that feeling well. I lived in it for months. Let me take you back. Not to the beginning of our marriage. Not to some romantic dinner or the moment I knew I was in love with her. Let me take you back to a Tuesday 6 weeks earlier. The night she came home smelling like cedar and citrus. A perfume I had never bought her. Wearing an excuse she hadn't even bothered to make convincing. Working late on a client rebranding, she said, already halfway to the bathroom. All hands on deck. I didn't say a word. I just watched her heels click down the hallway. At 9:14 that night, I checked her location. She wasn't at the office. She wasn't even in the same part of the city. She was at a restaurant called the Amber Lantern, the same place I had tried to book for our anniversary 2 years ago. She had said it was overpriced. I called ahead and asked if anyone had checked in under the name Serena. Nothing. Then I tried her colleague's name. And just like that, table for 2 corner booth, private section. I didn't go there. I didn't storm in. I sat on the couch in the dark. And I waited. 2 days later, she left her keys on the kitchen counter. I took her Audi to fill the gas tank. The seat had been pushed all the way back, much further than Serena would ever sit. The center console had a receipt for a restaurant in a city she had never mentioned visiting. And the ring she had cried about losing, was wedged so deep between the seat and the floor mat that it could only have ended up there in one specific way. That's when I stopped suspecting. That's when I knew. And once you know, you can't unknow. You can't pretend anymore. The question isn't whether to leave. The question is how. Not with rage. Not with a scene. I wanted something she couldn't talk her way out of. Something quiet, precise, final. Something that would reach her in a place where she had always felt completely safe. Her professional world, her polished public self. I called the airline and through a contact I had from a previous job arranged for her carry-on bag to be taken for a routine security inspection before boarding. A small velvet box was placed inside. The ring, the note, resealed, returned. No one asked questions. And now she was sitting there in that lounge, holding the evidence of her own lie, with nowhere to run and no story that could hold. I was already gone. The apartment key was on the counter exactly as the note said. Her clothes had been folded with care and dropped off at her sister's place. 2 suitcases. Everything she would need. I left a 3rd note taped to the inside pocket of the smaller bag. You always told me you needed a fresh start. Here it is. You're free now. Just not with me. But here's the thing I didn't know yet. I was not the only one who had left something for her that day. Her name was Lydia Marsh. She and Serena had been close once. back before Serena climbed fast enough to forget the people who helped her get there. Lydia had called me the evening before Serena's flight, voice low and careful. "You deserve to know what I know," she said. And what she told me made my stomach turn in ways I hadn't expected. She had been at a marketing retreat at a lakeside resort in upstate New York. She had seen Serena there with a man named Colton Graves, introduced to the group as a brand consultant. They weren't subtle. Barefoot in a suite with a bottle of wine. Serena wearing his jacket. Both of them laughing in a way that told you everything without a single word. But then Lydia said something I didn't see coming. She told HR that I violated client protocol during the Hartwell campaign launch. I lost my job. What actually happened was that she had caught Serena forwarding confidential client files to Colton. Strategy documents. Pricing models. Things that should never leave a company. Serena needed Lydia gone before she could say anything. So she moved first. The room went cold around me. I had thought I was dealing with a faithless wife. Lydia was telling me I was married to someone who had dismantled a colleague's career to protect something far more calculated. Lydia's note to Serena, handwritten on a folded square of paper tucked inside that gold compact, said simply, "Everything you stepped on to get here still remembers your weight." I can only imagine what it felt like. Sitting in that leather lounge chair, a tablet on her lap she could no longer focus on, holding two separate messages from two separate people who had both found her out in the same hour. Neither of us screaming. Neither of us demanding anything. Just the quiet, enormous weight of being seen. She called Colton the moment she got to a private bathroom. Her voice went from hushed and urgent to sharp and cold in under a minute. And then she slammed her phone against the side of the trash bin hard enough to crack the case. What happened next surprised me more than anything else. Serena did not board her flight to Chicago. She booked a new ticket to a different city entirely, under a slightly altered version of her name, with a departure time 3 hours later. No meeting. No investor-pitch. None of it was real. She had been planning to vanish. The next person to show up at my door was someone I had never met. Her name was Mallory Graves, Colton's wife. She didn't call ahead. She simply appeared, holding a manila folder, eyes steady, controlled, the kind of composure that comes from practicing the moment in your mind for days before living it. "Are you Nathan?" she asked. I said yes. "I'm Mallory," she said. "I think we're married to the same lie." I stepped back from the door and let her in. She set the folder on my kitchen counter and opened it without ceremony. Inside were photographs, hotel lobby timestamps, blurry screenshots of messages, 2 airline boarding passes with both their names in the same booking, and a receipt from a jewelry boutique in Midtown, Serena's name on the special order line, the engraving initials matching Colton's full name. My jaw tightened. Mallory turned to the last page. It was a printed email from her husband's sent folder. "We can't keep using the Meridian. My wife has friends there. Let's switch to the Charlotte location." Same arrangement. Below it was a forwarded reply from Serena, listing the exact dates I would be out of town, and the location of the spare key in our garage. That night Mallory and I sat across from each other in my own dining room like two people who had accidentally ended up on the same side of a war they didn't choose. We ordered food. We didn't pretend. We just existed in the same space, two strangers carrying the same weight. She took a photo. No filter, no pose. Just two people at a table and the kind of silence that speaks volumes. She sent it. Within 40 seconds, my phone lit up. "Serena." I didn't answer. Then Mallory's rang. "Colton." She muted it. The messages that followed came in waves. Increasingly frantic. Increasingly confused. Neither of us replied. Instead, Mallory told me something I have thought about almost every day since. People like them don't fear consequences. They fear being seen. 2 days after the photo went out, I was looking through old bank statements when I noticed something that stopped me cold. Small wire transfers recurring every 2 weeks, each one just under $400, all going to something called Straight Line Advisory. I had never heard of it, but the same charge appeared twice on the same statement, once under her name, once under mine. I had never authorized mine, not once. I logged into our shared financial platform. What I found was staggering. Payments to a P.O. box in Richmond, hotel stays in cities she had never mentioned. And then, buried in a document from 4 months ago, a security deposit confirmation for a 2-bedroom apartment leased in both our names without my knowledge or my signature. The lease was forged. My name was on a document I had never seen and never signed. I printed everything, took it to Molly. She read through it slowly, pressing her fingers against her temple like she was physically holding herself together. When she finished, she said 3 words that rearranged everything I thought I understood. They had a fallback, an escape route registered under our names to avoid suspicion, funded through accounts we didn't know were being used. Furnished, modern, anonymous. No photographs, no personal touches. Just a clean private space built entirely for disappearing into. And in the closet of that apartment, from a photo sent by a contact, was a framed print I recognized immediately. I had bought it on a weekend trip with Serena 2 years ago. She had told me she gave it to charity. Within 48 hours, Molly and I had found a folder on a shared cloud backup Serena had forgotten to disconnect from my account. The folder was labeled Exit September. Inside were travel schedules, offshore account withdrawal timelines, an investment group based out of the Cayman Islands, and 2 sets of passport scans. The names on them were not Serena or Colton. They were different names entirely, new identities documented and photographed. They had been weeks from vanishing completely. I found my way to a whistleblower forum through Mallory's contact in financial compliance. Buried in a thread about shell company fraud was a mention of straight-line advisory. I responded anonymously. 3 hours later, I received a reply. An address. A time. For levels underground in a parking garage in the financial district, I sat in my car while a man I had never seen before slid into the passenger seat. He didn't shake my hand. Didn't offer a name. He said that the man I knew as Colton Graves was not who he claimed to be. His real name was Marcus Dillard. 7 years ago in Phoenix, he had operated an investment fund that collapsed under fraud charges. Millions in investor money moved through cryptocurrency and offshore routing, then disappeared. He fled before charges could be formalized. The warrant expired. He resurfaced 2 years later in a new city with a new name, new credentials, and a new partner. Serena. She hadn't just fallen for a charming stranger. She had attached herself to a professional con artist. And whether she understood the full scope or had been gradually drawn in and manipulated, I could not yet say. But she had signed paperwork. She had leaned on her professional reputation, her real name, her legitimate corporate connections to give their scheme a credible face. A lawyer named Douglas Hale, who had been quietly suspicious of the fund for months, agreed to meet with us. He looked through our documents for 40 minutes without saying a word. Then he said, "This is federal-level wire fraud. The moment they move those funds again, the clock starts ticking in a way they cannot outrun." And then Serena called me. First time in weeks. Her voice was stripped of everything I had known in it. The confidence, the warmth, the careful precision. She sounded like someone standing in a room they had just realized had no doors. She told me Colton was gone. His accounts were closed. She couldn't reach anyone he had introduced her to. Someone had been following her for 3 nights. She had changed hotels. He still found her room. And then she said the words I had been waiting months to hear. He may have used my name for things I didn't sign. She finally admitted it. Out loud. To me. She wasn't trying to manipulate. She was terrified. And in that moment I had to reckon with something uncomfortable. Maybe she hadn't been the mastermind. Maybe she had been his most useful tool. And she was only now understanding what that meant. I told her not to touch the offshore account. Not to log in. Not to move anything. If the man outside her hotel appeared again, call the front desk. Not me. Then I hung up. Molly had already found the next thread. A wire transfer from one of Colton's accounts had flagged a compliance review at a partner institution Douglas had quietly notified. The transfer was heading toward a private vessel registry in Savannah, Georgia. He wasn't flying. He was sailing out. We drove through the night. Molly took the wheel. We arrived at the marina just before dawn. The fog was sitting low over the docks like a secret trying to hold itself together. At Pier 6, a white sailboat was being readied. The man on the dock moved fast and quiet, the kind of person who had left places before and knew exactly how it was done. We didn't confront him. We didn't need to. The documents had already been filed. The transfer had already been flagged. The moment that boat crossed into international waters, a different kind of alert would follow, one that doesn't dissolve with aliases or charm. We watched him board. He looked back once, scanning the dock. He never saw us. We let him go, not because we couldn't stop him, because letting him believe he had slipped away meant he wouldn't scramble to bury what he'd left behind. And what he left behind was everything Douglas needed. Serena called one last time that afternoon.
No excuses.
No performance. Just a long silence and then one sentence. You were never the fool. I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, you still have a choice. You can go on record before they come for you, or you can wait for them to come and hope the outcome is different. 2 days later, her attorney contacted Douglas Hale and offered a full documented confession in exchange for reduced liability. She handed over every login, every record, every password Colton had ever shared with her. She burned everything he had built, whether it came from guilt or from fear, or from the pure survival instinct of a woman who finally realized she was the one holding the bag while he sailed away. I don't know. But it was enough. Marcus Dillard, the man who had called himself Colton Graves, was arrested 4 weeks later in Puerto Rico, stepping off a different boat at a small port near Ponce. A routine customs agent ran a background check. The red flags came up immediately. He was extradited within 10 days. Serena's testimony was the foundation of the federal case. There was no dramatic courtroom scene.
No headlines. No cameras.
Just a quiet, methodical process that dismantled everything they had spent 2 years building. Piece by piece, the way you dismantle any lie from the bottom up. Mallory and I met one final time 3 months later at a small bookshop in the old part of the city. We had coffee and talked about everything except them. About who we had been before all of it. About what we still wanted from our lives. Before she left, she stopped by the door and said, I think we were supposed to crash into each other. Not to save each other. Just to remember what it feels like to be seen by someone honest. She smiled. It was a real smile. The kind you don't plan. I smiled back. It has been 8 months since that morning in the airport lounge. I moved to a smaller city. A quieter life. I work part-time for an organization that helps victims of financial fraud navigate the legal system. Not because I needed the work, but because I needed to do something real with what I had learned. I no longer check her accounts. I no longer visit her social media. I no longer wear the ring I once thought I would never take off. And some mornings, when the weather is clear, I drive down to the water and just stand there breathing. Because I have learned something about escape that took me far too long to understand. It doesn't always mean running. Sometimes it just means choosing yourself again, quietly, deliberately, without anyone watching. And that choice, once made, is the only one that actually sticks.